And welcome to Wednesday Night Slides number 52. This is going to be largely a current events show. I did quite a bit this month, more than I had set out to do when I started making plans back in January. I booked a weekend, and then next thing you know, something cooler comes along, so I booked that, and then something even cooler comes along, so I booked that. Next thing you know, I got a jam-packed schedule. That's beginning to ease up now, but boy, last few weeks have been pretty hectic. So most of the show is going to be that. So we are going to get started here. Let me just find my slide program, get this. Oh, I need to do that. I just need to share the screen. I've already found my slide program. And y'all should be seeing the title slide.
It's there, Peyton, in full regalia.
All right, and as usual, if you have any comments or questions during the show, I don't mind you stepping in and asking a question. Easiest way to do that is just hit your space bar on your computer and ask away. First, a commercial message. The Steam book, I had it printed last month and it sold out. It went like hotcakes. I need to reprint it again. Hopefully, the end of next month, I'll put it back on press again. I got requests for it. It's been a good book.
And mine showed up, and the package is not damaged, so that's a good.
That said, well, the next book then has to get ready to go, and that's going to be New Jersey commuter rails. I'm starting to pull slides for this, or pull images rather, off my computer, off Lightroom. And it's going to cover everything from Lackawanna MUs and U34s and Newark City subway PCCs right up to the modern stuff, including the Atlantic City line and the River line, which I just briefly touched on in my South Jersey book. They'll be mentioned again in this book, but no duplicate photos. Everything's going to be fresh. That hopefully will be going on press in late summer, early fall. But we'll start the pre-sales on that probably Memorial Day weekend coming up here. So keep that in mind. That's the next one going out the door. All right, on to the slides. The day I went up to pick up the Steam book, I had to pick it up in Totowa, New Jersey. And when I do that, I tend to meander on up. And my first stop was in Manville, where, as usual, as I pull into Manville, I see the back end of a freight just clearing town. However, this locomotive set here was running around a train in the siding there. So I got them, picked up the book, and then went over to Towako on the Boonton line. I hadn't done much with the Boonton line. I knew Towako was a pretty good location. So I did some shots in Towako. And then I went over to Mountain Lakes and got this shot here with the depot. This was also a night tri-state met, so I was able to also scoot down to Morristown and take in the tri-state chapters meeting that night. Other short stuff. I went over to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania over in Strasburg for a presentation by J. Craig Thorpe. He's the artist who's done a lot of Amtrak's calendars and stuff. He did a very good presentation. He did it again for the Center for River Photography and Art last night. And if you haven't seen his presentation, he'll have that. They'll have that on their YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. Here's Craig with some of his artwork. And then after Craig's presentation, I went over to Lemon Place Junction and caught Amtrak's Pennsylvanian coming through eastbound. And then, of course, Strasburg is actually running weekdays already. They don't let much grass grow between the ties. Whenever they can run, they run. My favorite tourist line engine, Canadian National number 89 on the head end here. And this drone shot here of the 89. Always wanted to get this low level shot coming out of Groundhog Cut at Hespen Shade Road. Problem is, usually there's a lot of rail fans out, and the low angle I wanted will put the drone in their shots. But since this was a weekday, there was nobody else around, so I was able to finally get this angle with the drone. Just this past weekend, I rode a streetcar trip with the Friends of Philadelphia Trolleys in Philadelphia. It was done in conjunction with the meet of the East Penn Traction Group. Our first photo stop wasn't planned, but we were blocked by this ambulance, so we did a photo stop while we waited for the ambulance to clear. This is not from that trip. This is from February 2022. This is a trip I ran, Super Saturday trip. And here we see a car at 40th and Walnut in Philadelphia passing a 1990s era McDonald's. You can see that it's beginning to get a little bit ragged. There's some plastic missing in the McDonald's sign. University of Penn bought the property to repurpose it. This is how the McDonald's looked in February 2022. We did the same photo stop in February 2023. And now McDonald's has lost its signage and its trim on the roof. And we did the same photo stop here this past weekend, and there's McDonald's. So things change. Did a photo on the brickwork. There's a little bit of brickwork left between the tracks on 42nd Street. So we had a photo stop there. And in the Center City Tunnel, that's a regular service car catching up to us. The photo stops can be done as long as they don't block any other regular service cars. Sometimes the operators on the trailing cars get irate and toot the horn. This operator behind us pulled up behind us and just sat there and waited for us to finish. That was kind of nice of him. This is the loop at the 40th Street portal where the Center City Tunnel goes into underneath Center City and then comes out onto the surface lines. If you look carefully, you can see the streetcar is displaying a destination sign for F, Market and Castro, which is on the other coast. But when we do these trips, we have some fun with the destination signs. I went into the Mount Moriah Loop. This is a turnback loop that's used on weekdays. Mount Moriah Cemetery was abandoned, Civil War era cemetery, abandoned for the longest while. Now there's a friends group trying to put it together. The gatehouse, which you see in the background there, has begun to crumble, but the Friends have tried to stabilize what's left of it with bracing. I don't know if it's going to be a winning battle or not. On Route 13 coming into Darby, Route 62 on the destination sign is a long gone route to Darby. That is no longer a valid SEPTA trolley route. It may be a bus route at this point. But going into Darby, or actually in the Yeadon, on the Route 13, they're going to do a rail replacement project. And here you see the rails stacked up, waiting to be put into the street here on Chester Avenue. And this is in Darby. This is going past the oldest continuously active library in the United States. That building there. And that kind of brought an end to the streetcar charter. Now we'll get to the big trips, the 3 big trips from the last month or so. We're going to be in late April here, headed up to Milford, New York. And on the way up in Binghamton, stumbled upon the Susquehanna freight just sitting just outside Binghamton. And apparently it sat for a while because this was Friday evening. And the folks came up Saturday morning to Binghamton for the charter, saw the same freight still sitting there. The destination was the Cooperstown and Charlotte Valley. But first, we got a chance to ride and did a photo run by with the Milford Park Railway. Milford Park Railway is actually stored in the engine house of the Cooperstown and Charlotte Valley. And the Milford Park, City Park, actually abuts the railroad's property. So they put in this quarter-mile loop, and this railroad was originally owned by a fellow who built it for his grandchildren. The coaches are a bit tight because they're built for grandchildren. So all of his photographers who had to get in and out for this photo run by, it was a tight squeeze. They're going to rebuild some. They got some other old cars on the property. They're going to rebuild into coaches for the Milford Park Railway. So off we went with our Alco, or actually MLW, Montreal Locomotive Works S7 8223 for Canadian National. And boy, the folks at the Cooperstown and Charlotte Valley really put on a show. They could get those Alcos smoking real good for the photo run-bys. We're at Pop's Place, an ice cream place, snack place along the highway, which is behind us by 100 yards or so. And they had this little lighthouse down by the waterfront, a little pond there. Makes a nice photo prop. Here we see the 8223 on our photo freight, once again, smoking it up. This is at Dream Park. Dream Park is just below Cooperstown. Of course, Cooperstown's a big baseball area. The Hall of Fame is there. And Dream Park is a summer baseball camp. Baseball diamonds as far as the eye can see. And this station here serves the camp. We're actually at the station here. A little pan shot of the 8223 at Dream Park. And this little bridge is also there on the property. The next time we do this, if the weather is decent, we didn't have horrible weather. Weather could have been a whole lot worse. But next time we do this, we do it on a sunny day. I want to do a drone shot here and get up above and show all the baseball diamonds that are around the area. The forecast for this weekend was like rain, just washout, complete washout. And even on the morning of the trip, the forecast was calling for rain most of the day. Somehow we got through the entire day with nothing more than a little bit of mist coming in every now and then. All around us, though, everybody got walloped by rains. We really lucked out on this. This is the passenger train that took the photographers between photo locations using this ex-Delaware and Hudson S2, which last worked for the Claremont Concorde up in New Hampshire. And our photo freight. As bad as the weather was, these photos came out a whole lot better than they should have. There's a runaround south of Cooperstown. That's usually as far as the railroad runs in regular service on our tourist operation. But we ran around our train and then pushed back as far as we could up into Cooperstown to get this shot next to the Welcome to Cooperstown sign. All the locals came out to see what was going on because trains almost never get up this far on the railroad. In fact, our observation car, our six-axle coach rather, on the back of the train, had gone a little farther than anything had gone recently, and it was breaking up bamboo and the rails were sinking down into the mud, but we got the shot and we got out of there without derailing anything. Did this shot on this 1896 truss bridge. And same bridge, different angle. This is going southbound now, so we kept the caboose on the end of the train both directions. That required a little bit of switching at Cooperstown at the runaround track. The railroad was really good about accommodating us on our requests for keeping the train properly oriented. Here's our passenger train behind the ex-D&H S2. The locomotive behind it is actually an ex-Canadian National locomotive built by Montreal Locomotive Works. It's the railroad's own paint scheme now. They use a quasi Delaware and Hudson paint scheme. So it's lettered Cooperstown and Charlotte Valley. The locomotive itself was out of service, but they brought it along just for fun for the photos. We actually chartered the railroad. We chartered the railroad. We sent them a check and paid for just the photo freight. It's all we paid for. And after they cashed the check and all the plans were made, the railroad added the rider passenger train at no extra cost and added the dead Alco into the consist at no extra cost. So they were really good to us. Coming down past the pond at Pop's Place again, heading south now. And a little bit of a reflection there in the water. We did most run-bys twice, did some 3 times. Had a nice pizza dinner in between. Then I was out for the night photo session. Back up to Pops with the 8223, now with just a caboose hop. And that's when the rain started falling. This is the first significant rain we had all day. It was just a shower. It looks a lot worse in the picture than it was. But we had the strobes all bagged up in plastic bags. So they didn't get wet. But the rain finally caught up to us during the night photos. Looks like snow, but it's actually raindrops. And we got back down to Milford. The rain let up, and we did a couple of shots at the railroad's depot in Milford, including hooping up orders. And this scene with the operator coming out with the orders. That's Bruce Hodges, president of the railroad and the president of the affiliated Leatherstocking Railway Historical Society. And Bruce was really good. I've known Bruce for eons, and anything we wanted, they did. It was really, really, really a great day. Headed back home, we stopped off in Cortland, looking for Susquehanna's freshly painted SD70M-2s. They just got these from Norfolk Southern, painted in black. They run them through their paint shop in Butler, New Jersey, and they look really sharp in the Susquehanna Yellow Jacket scheme. These two are just sitting in Cortland, not powered, waiting for, I guess, whatever train would come along on Monday. And this shot here, I kind of like to be a little bit better in black and white, even though you lose the yellow of the Yellow Jacket. Next big trip was only a week later, back to Connecticut this time. This was on Saturday morning in Windsor. The Windsor station for Amtrak on the Springfield line is just to the left. Amtrak regional train heading down from Springfield. Line is also used by CT Rail, the Springfield line commuter service. This is a weekend put together by Mark Glucksman and his River Rail photo banner that he has. It was based around a night photo session at the Connecticut Trolley Museum, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But Mark packaged together a full weekend of activities. Once this was done, we headed over to Glastonbury, where the Gray Granite Railroad runs. Now, I had never heard of the Gray Granite Railroad. And to be honest, I didn't put a whole lot of effort into researching this trip. We went with Mike Burkhart and John Regan. I was like, just tell me where to go and when to be there. So they said, we're heading for this railroad on this guy's farm. Well, I pictured a little, 10-ton locomotive with a tall stack that went put, around a loop in a farm field. This is actually a pretty impressive railroad. It's only 3/4 of a mile so far. They got big plans. This is on the Cavana farm in Glastonbury, and John Cavana has really put a lot of work into it. There's John in the cab of the locomotive. As you can see, it's a pretty heavy-duty railroad. This is the extension they're building. They got a lot more to go, but they've accomplished quite a bit in a pretty short amount of time. The roadbed is ballasted with granite, and all the granite comes from a granite quarry right there on John's farm. He's got 420 some odd acres of farmland here, and does granite quarrying, crop growing, fruit growing, all kind of stuff. Plus the railroad. Of course, got a bunch of photographers here, so you got to do photo stops and photo run-bys. So we did some photo stops with the train. Another thing they do is Christmas trees. So you got a lot of acreage devoted to Christmas trees. The open car behind the locomotive, that is cut down from a boxcar. And there are 2 cabooses on the property. They normally use both cabooses. But because it would look a little more proper with just 1 caboose on the back for photography, they just brought 1 caboose out on the trip. It's a 35-ton locomotive built by Plymouth. There's John and his right-hand man on his left, or his right, actually, our left, Alex. Then came the activities with the Connecticut Trolley Museum. And part of that museum, there's an affiliated group, the Connecticut Antique Fire Apparatus Association. In addition to fire apparatus, they have a few buses. And they brought out their 1965 GMC fishbowl bus and brought it over to the CT rail station in Windsor Locks and posed it with this southbound CT rail train. After the CT rail train went by, the bus drove over to the museum and posed with one of the museum's open Connecticut company streetcars. We had a little bit of a break, and Amtrak was coming north to Springfield with one of the 50th anniversary engines on the point. So we went over to the Connecticut River and set up for a shot. I found this really nice shot, nicely framed and everything else. Problem was, I didn't realize how small the train was going to appear on the bridge. That is a 50th anniversary engine out there somewhere. It kind of blends in. It probably would have been a better shot with one of the regular Amtrak silver engines. So I probably should have done this a little bit differently. What I did was I took the same frame, I cropped it way down, ran it through Lightroom. That's what I should have taken, I guess. With the 50th anniversary locomotive. This is a very, very small piece of that last picture. But I ran it through a bunch of different Topaz Lightroom packages, or not Lightroom, Topaz software packages, including up-resing it, sharpening it, and that's what I got. Just don't print it big. Back over to the museum as evenings begin to settle in, getting ready for the night photo session. This is in Warehouse Point, Connecticut. Our fishbowl bus was there again, along with another one of the Connecticut company streetcars on the property. And this Montreal open tram, they brought that out for some photos at dusk. They do a Christmas lights thing where they have lights strung up along all their catenary poles, all along the line, down the entire length of the railroad. And in December, with the lights up and bitter cold, this Montreal open car is a pretty big hit with people who want to get out and ride and see the lights out in the open despite the cold weather. Went after this grade crossing for our first shot, and whenever I do streetcar light photos, I try to take at least one shot using just existing light, because oftentimes the interior lights of the streetcar make for a really nice shot. This is before the official session started. And then our official first shot was with the fishbowl and this Connecticut company car at the grade crossing as the gates came down. This is from the opposite side at the same grade crossing. This is a 3-car setup. All 3 cars are ex-Connecticut company. This was existing light. Like I said, I try to do that at least once during these trolley night photo sessions. And then the official shot was this shot showing all 3 Connecticut company cars the museum has operating. Some of these shots are really tight, like this shot here. You could only fit 3 or 4 people in the spot that got all 3 streetcars. But Mark was really patient, and the photographers were all really patient, and everybody cycled through and got the shot. Here you see some of the lights they have for Christmas. Not all of them are lit in May. This one set was for some reason. So I stepped back and got a shot of the photographers getting the 3-car shot with the Christmas lights overhead. And we did this shot next to the semaphore set on the line. Mark had posted shots of these semaphores a couple years ago, and they were pretty beat up then. And he posted to Facebook, and somebody commented, well, they really should, do something with those semaphores. Mark responded, well, somebody should do something. Well, come on out, volunteer, donate some money, do something. Well, darn if the guy didn't do something. He came out and he took down the semaphores, repainted them, rewired them, and got them all working again. So that was pretty nice. Did this lineup here of Connecticut cars. 2 of them were obviously inoperable in the shed there. We did a night shot of this XCN box cab electric. Used to run a commuter service through the Mont Royal Tunnel in Montreal. Retired in the early 1990s. There were, I think, 6 of these cars. John's going to correct me if I'm wrong. 6 of these locomotives. They were scattered about. Unfortunately, the Trolley Museum here no longer wants this locomotive. And all they're saying is it's going away. I'm not sure exactly what it's going away means, and nobody's really saying. Apparently, though, the one up in Dumontaine has just been restored really nicely. That was the end of the line for the Montreal Electrics. Next morning, we were over at the Connecticut Antique Machinery Association in Kent. They got this really cool narrow gauge ex-Hawaii Railway 242. And we had permission to get over there early to watch it get fired up. Of course, it's an hour and a half from the Trolley Museum. We're up to after midnight at the Trolley Museum over here at 7:30 in the morning. And unfortunately, it developed a air compressor issue and nothing was happening. They did tow it outside. We got a few photos with it while they worked on the compressor. Of course, we're rail fans, the photographers. We want pictures. So we hijacked their little Plymouth locomotive and that little car behind it as a rider car. And off we went on their quarter-mile of trackage with a photo train. Went to the end of the line at the entrance to the grounds where Argent Lumber 280 number 4 is on display. This is an antique farm place for the most part, and they have fire ups twice a year. This is one of the 2 weekends they fire everything up, so it's a little hard to get the steam engine to actually under steam unless you're there on one of the weekends. And then if you are there on one of the weekends, there's usually 1 million people around. We were really hoping to get over here before the crowds showed up and get some photos of the Hawaii engine, but that wasn't going to happen. So off we went with our little Plymouth. That's the car he rode in, and we stopped here and there and did photos. That's what we do. While we were over here, that's one of the workers polishing the bell with number 5. While we were over here, the Danbury Railway Museum had a booth set up next to the engine house here in Kent to solicit membership and get visitors over to Danbury, which is not far from here, 30 miles maybe. Anyhow, the president of the Danbury Museum was running the booth, and he heard our predicament that we had come over for the steam engine. The steam engine wasn't running. We were, a little disappointed. So he offered us a complimentary tour of the Danbury Museum. He got on the phone, called over to the museum, and arranged for all of us to get into the museum for free, and arranged to have a tour guide for us. So off we went over to Danbury, and we had this area here is usually off limits. You can only go so far in the museum where it's public access. But we had a guide who took us around, and we photographed all kinds of cool equipment, including this Canadian National FA and FB set, and New Haven FL9 in the background. New York Central FL9, which the New York Central never had FL9s. This was repainted by Metro North to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the New York and Harlem Railroad back in 2000, 2001, 2002. And while we were out there, we also did a chase on foot of their ex-New Haven rail diesel car, which they used to take people around the property and show some of the equipment. They're directly adjacent to the Metro North end of the line of the Danbury branch, the locomotive facility there. And normally they bring the RDC down to here, let people off, and they can take a ride on the turntable. On this day here, though, the turntable obviously is being redecked So no rides were given, but I did get a shot of the RDC with the redecked turntable. And then the last big event was over at East Broad Top in Orbisonia, Pennsylvania. Rock Hill Furnace, technically, which is the town next to Orbisonia. We started off on a Sunday night with a night photo session down by the Sand House with a freshly restored East Broad Top narrow gauge 282 number 16 under steam. 16 made its public debut in February, following a roughly 2-year-long restoration. It had not run prior to that since 1956, when the EBT originally shut down as a coal hauler. And on the turntable, and inside the roundhouse. The following day was a charter that was organized by Carl Franz. And off we went with our EBT. Oh, it's still in the roundhouse. Off we went with our EBT photo fray. You'll see that in a second here. Inside the roundhouse, by the way, while I got the shot here, all 6 surviving East Broad Top 282s all still live in the roundhouse. Of the 6, 4 of them ran in the original tourist era from 1960 to 2011. The 12, 14, 15, and 17 all ran in the original tourist era. 16, which runs now, hadn't run since 56. The only one now that has not run since 1956 is the 18 here. Okay, off to the charter. Here we are at the Rock Hill Furnace shops. And going by the Orbisonia station, which is actually in Rock Hill Furnace. And our first run bys of the morning. Once again, about 4 days out, the forecast was for clouds and rain all day. And somehow, as the weekend got closer and closer, the forecast got better and better. We had nothing but blue skies all day long. East Broad Top in the 1950s, their typical train consisted of a steam locomotive, a single locomotive, a boxcar for less than carload freight, which was essentially the UPS of its day. And then they would run about 20 hopper cars, empties north, loads north, empties south. And then on the back of the train would be a combination baggage car and coach. They ran with cabooses until passenger service ended. And then once passenger service ended, the brakemen liked the ride of the combines so much better that they didn't get rid of the cabooses. They stopped using the cabooses and ran with a combine on the back instead. This is up at the north end of the tourist era, East Broad Top, up at Colgate Grove. They run about 4.5 miles north out of Rock Hill Furnace. This whole area here, this is the north leg of the Y up there where they turn the trains around. This whole area was never this open before. These are all like shots we could never do in the 70s and 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Never could do these before. That's out on the main line, coming down from what would have been the main line north of Mount Union, heading south. Once again, this is a shot that was never available before. Back on the big field near Runk Road. And then after a quick stop back in Rock Hill Furnace, wasn't that quick, but a stop at Rock Hill Furnace to get some water in the tender. We went back north again for a few more photo run-bys just north of Rock Hill Furnace. Had these flowers blooming along the tracks. Dave Dimitrovich, he was our engineer. He's also the CMO of the East Broad Top. He put on a pretty good show with the smoke. And the old East Broad Top tourist sign, just north of Orbisonia. This has become quite the landmark. A lot of folks have like this as a photo prop. I know Pete Laro used it during his photo charters about a month earlier. We used it on our charters. I'm pretty sure the railroad realizes that this sign, even though it's not authentic to the coal era East Broad Top, has become a bit of an icon along the railroad. This is inside the pump house, just north of the Orbisonia station. For this shot here, all I did was I exposed for the outside. Use my standard outdoor photo settings, so I wouldn't overexpose the outdoors. And then in Lightroom, just brightened up all the shadows to bring out the detail inside. Pan shot just north of the Orbisonia station. Train is not going that fast. And as we got towards 1 o'clock or so, high sun came in. So these are like the last couple of shots before a late lunch. Then in the afternoon, we started off down in the East Broad Top yard. The coal tipples in the background, that was where East Broad Top steam locomotives took on coal in the coal hauling era. The building on top, the shed, vanished at some point during the tourist era. But the Friends of the East Broad Top have restored the shed. They used to push hopper cars up into the shed, dump them into the bins below, and then put coal in the locomotives. They're going to put the tracks back up to the shed just for looks eventually. But the shed will be returned as a coal loading place of locomotives. But the coal into the coal tipple will be brought there by truck. And then back out in the line again for a few more run-bys in the afternoon. This shot here, a little bit of shadow on the nose of the locomotive. I like the way you can see the fireman hanging out of the window on the right-hand side there. I tried converting this to a black and white, but I decided I liked it better in color. Did a couple of run-bys here. This is a new area we hadn't used before for photo run-bys. What's opened this up now is there is a brand new campground just out of the frame to the left. And actually there's a picnic table just out of the frame to the left. But with the campground there, this shot is opened up as usable for a large group for photo run-bys. And we finished off with some nice smoky run-bys in the late afternoon sun. And our final shot was crossing over Black Log Creek on the dividing line between Orbisonia and Rock Hill Furnace. There's only 4.5 miles of railroad here, and there aren't that many places you can do photo run-bys because of private property. I was helping out with selecting photo run-by locations, and towards the end of the trip, I was out of ideas. We still had time. I was out of ideas. The organizer, Carl Franz, hates the shot. But I said, no, we're going to do it anyhow because there's nothing else we can do. Not a bad shot. Carl says, well, it cuts off all the wheels. Well, no, you can still see the side rods, and it's not awful. And with the water and the bridge, it's something different than what you get anywhere else on the railroad. That's going to wrap things up in time for some second period hockey here. The next show is going to be on June 21st. Hopefully, I'm trying to get these shows out of the magazine deadline because sometimes things are a little bit hectic. Next show is June 21st. I'm going to close this down for the folks on YouTube now, sign off for them. And